Good afternoon.
We are absolutely thrilled that you could all come out to be with us this afternoon and join us for what is going to be a really exciting and really informative conversation. My name is Jonathan Hill. I have the honor and pleasure of serving as Dean of the Seidenberg School of Computer Science and Information Systems. And as always, I am delighted to have the opportunity to bring some of our very successful alums in front of this vibrant mix of faculty, students, staff, other alumni, and friends from cybersecurity and the wider technology industry. As you're all aware, cybersecurity is a signature strength for the Seidenberg School. We are a designated National Center of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance Education as certified by the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security. Our cybersecurity programs are industry-driven and interdisciplinary at the undergraduate and now the graduate levels. To answer the evolving skills need of other cyber professionals, we continue to enhance and create new programs and degrees, such as our brand spanking new Masters of Cybersecurity, which is launching this fall. And we are, as always, especially proud of our PACE graduates who are leading and making an impact in the field of cybersecurity. And I am incredibly proud to welcome back some of these accomplished PACE graduates today. Always my pleasure to serve on the panel with our Executive Director of Cybersecurity Programs, Professor Liqiao Chen. And together, we're going to go through what we think will be a very insightful discussion of the current nature of the cybersecurity industry, including trends and the very important future of cybersecurity education as we try to prepare the cyber defenders and cyber warriors for the 2020s and beyond. So please join me in welcoming this absolutely fabulous panel. I'd like to start by introducing to you Mr. Michael Corcione. Michael holds a Management of Information Systems degree from PACE. He advises firms and boards on cybersecurity and privacy strategy. He leads the delivery of Chief Information Security Officer Support Services for Norcross Group, LLC, and is a Cybersecurity Advisory Board member for our Seidenberg School. Michael also provides advisement on regulatory enforcement matters related to cyber and information security and appropriate remediation. Next, I'm very pleased to welcome back Mr. Emile Trombetti. Emile earned his Master's of Science in Information Systems Management at PACE. He is President and Chief Operating Officer of Pragmatics, a mid-tier technology and management consulting firm who largely supports federal government clients, specifically the Department of Defense, as well as intelligence and civilian agencies. So Emile is here to translate Washington, D.C.'s for us. And also thrilled to have joining us Joseph Tsao. Joe is Chief Information Security Officer for Scotiabank US. He has a Master's of Science with distinction in Information Security and Assurance from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and a Bachelor of Science with summa cum laude in Computer Forensics from PACE. Joe is an IT and cybersecurity professional with over 20 years of experience with a focus on creating and managing cybersecurity programs. His experience includes cyber IT risk management, data governance, security governance, incident response, and privacy management. And as previously mentioned, as always, I am delighted, very delighted to have with us our Seidenberg professor, Dr. Liqiao Chen. She has a PhD in engineering and public policy from Carnegie Mellon University and was affiliated with the Center for Computational Analysis of Social and Organizational Systems. Her current research is focused on user authentication, application security, security risk perception and management, and security policy enforcement. She is the principal investigator of the Cyber Core program at Pace University, supported by the National Science Foundation, which through Dr. Chen's auspices has given millions of dollars to Pace University for cybersecurity research and education. And she also oversees our Gen Cyber program, supported by the National Security Agency. Panelists, thank you for being here today, and let's get ready to rumble. Everybody set?
Sir, thank you, Jonathan.
Sure.
Fantastic. So I'd like to begin by asking each of you to share why you entered the field of cybersecurity and tell us a little bit about how your education helped your career. Emil, could you start us off?
Sure. Well, why I entered cybersecurity is as a computer science graduate, there really is no choice. It goes hand in hand with any kind of computer systems. So, you really can't do security. And when I started years ago on Wall Street, it was mostly mainframe computing. But now with distributed computing and computing intelligence really distributed across both, corporate and personal networks, so you cannot avoid cybersecurity. It is ingrained in everything we do. And quite frankly, my education was very helpful because if you really don't understand the theory behind computing systems and information systems, it's very difficult to keep up with the changing landscape of threat. The threat is evolving every day. We just saw recently the Twitter hacks. We're hearing hacks now from Russia on COVID-19 cures, or I should say vaccines. So it is table stakes today. You have to understand cybersecurity or you really cannot work in the information technology field.
Yeah, interesting. And your background in financial services, I think, is echoed with a lot of folks here because that has been ground zero for a lot of the things that need to be defended and a lot of the attacks. Michael, tell us about your start.
Yeah, sure, Jonathan. First, thank everybody for joining us today. Instead of saying I entered the field of cybersecurity, it's more that cybersecurity entered my field. Starting 30 plus years ago at Pace as a MIS major, working in technology, and back when we used to call it information security before it was called cyber, and hitting on Emil's points that the cyber aspect is really tracking those threats and the threat actors and how things have evolved with the multiple vectors that these attackers will look to use to perpetrate their crimes. Advancing technology at an accelerated pace more than ever in today's market really has made cybersecurity really critical. And knowing not only who your threat actors are, but what their motives are, what their capabilities are, and thinking like an attacker is really where it comes to being more of a cyber expert. My education at Pace started, a real good foundation to my career with the labs and technologies that they give the students access to, as well as faculty that are really in the field and understanding what is going on in the marketplace on a day-to-day basis. But the universities like Pace that have built up these forensics labs, these hackathons that students can get involved in, the hands-on experience is really valuable for getting to the next level of their career.
That's great, Michael, and thank you. And Joe, how did you get started?
Thanks, Jonathan, for the introduction, and thanks to me everyone today. So early in my career, I always had a knick-knack for security compliance, especially from the IT side of things. It led me to really want to learn more about cybersecurity, but it really wasn't up to maybe my last career when I was running a VP of IT operations for a hedge fund when security regulations from SEC came down, asking that all the hedge funds required to have a cybersecurity program. So that really kind of drew me into learning what cybersecurity really is about and how to really create the program. This actually led me into eventually going back to school and actually finishing my degree. So I picked Pace University at the time for the computer forensics degree so I could learn more about cybersecurity. I actually ended up falling in love with it, and continue my education and get my master's security. Eventually I got my certifications in information security as well too. So that really drove my career path from being someone that enjoys security compliance to really understanding and wanting to learn more about the fundamentals of cybersecurity itself.
Thanks, Joe, and we're really glad you picked us. So I'd like to talk for a minute about the current state of cybersecurity. I know the answer 5 minutes from now will be different from the one you give at the moment. But with the impact of the pandemic and the political unrest in the US and other places in the world, what is the current state of things? Emil, can you speak to the government public sector perspective?
Sure. I'll try to be brief because I could talk about this for probably 3 hours. But, Specifically with the federal government, there's kind of two sides to the federal government, right? There is the federal government protecting the agency systems, intelligence, DOD, and civilian agencies. And then there's protection of the citizens. And quite frankly, one of the issues that the federal government has with many agencies that a lot of their legacy applications are still legacy systems. They're old systems. And the problem that they're having is that they're moving more to a secure development operations framework. But many of the systems that they still work on are still old, and you really can't apply such things. And quite frankly, when these systems were built because of speed and policy and certain things, they weren't built with 100% security in mind from the beginning. They were more bolt-on. So the federal government is really kind of dealing with, one, how do we modernize these systems and really make them secure? And then secondly, how do we protect the data of citizens, which is becoming more and more an issue. And you spoke about COVID. I think the thing that really is making things completely different now with COVID is that the corporate network, it was like this for mobility, but now the corporate network is everybody. There is no such thing as the corporate network anymore. If you're working at home and you're sitting with a personal computer or an intelligent device with corporate or government data on it, you're now part of the network. And protecting every component of that is just becoming more and more complex.
Wow, interesting and very sobering. Michael, how about for you with companies like North Cross and the various clients that you serve across all industry sectors?
Sure.
What are you hearing from them?
Sure. On the government side, where Emil mentioned, protecting the citizens' data, for corporations, it's protecting what we'll call their crown jewels. And those crown jewels can be a multitude of things. It's their customer data, their intellectual property, their vectors for their systems to distribute information, their reputation could be part of their crown jewels. And all of these crown jewels are things that leadership needs to understand, identify, and like I said earlier, know what the attacker's motives are. But more importantly, understand what's the impact if these are compromised, right? What's it going to affect our business long term? So in the corporate world, it really is across the organization. It's not just in IT. And a successful cyber business risk assessment is evaluating those risks and threats in technology, but in our legal and compliance area, like Joe mentioned, and things you have to worry about from the regulators. How does it affect our sales? When firms look at how they're investing money these days or where they're spending dollars, the CFO and the finance teams will always come back and say, what's our return on the investment? In the cyberspace, it's not necessarily a return on investment, but it's a protection of your investment, because disruption to your revenue supply chain, the flows of capital coming in, can cripple an organization. In many cases, puts organizations out of business. So it's really cross the organization that you have to look at all areas that could be impacted and what are those ramifications of an attack.
Yeah, interesting. And a quick celebrity sighting and shout out to our CIO Emeritus, Frank Monaco, who's tuning in today. Welcome, Frank. Nice to see you.
Nice to see
and
you.
Joe, tell us about the impact that you're seeing in the financial services sector.
Yes, I actually had a lot of conversation with the CISOs in the financial sector. I think this pandemic has actually made us look at how we protect cybersecurity in a totally different landscape. Given that most of the workforce today is now working from home, we now have to account for how do we protect our users when they're working from home. In the past, while we did have users working from home, they're not working from home every single day. And we are seeing a huge uptick right now on hackers just attacking home systems, right? Either denial of service attacks or even phishing and compromising people's home PCs or home networks, I mean, you're starting to see a lot of security alerts saying that, home systems are being compromised because people are not updating security patches on their home devices, their routers, or even their IoT devices at home. So I think it's making it much harder and challenging for the financial services sector to really protect our users at home when they're remoting in and doing work from remote services these days. It's a different world that we live in. It's accounting for us to think differently on how we need to protect our critical crown jewels within the organizations. But yeah, I think that's the biggest challenges we're facing today in cybersecurity. How do we protect our home users when they're working from home?
Yeah, it's unprecedented, and it's bring your own device on steroids. And Dr. Chen, what is PACE doing to address these workforce needs, and how are we adapting to teach students remotely?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. That's a very good question. And as many of the panelists have spoken, during the pandemic, many people have transitioned their work virtually. And then in a PACE university, we are doing the same thing. We transition many of the courses. We teach them online virtually using different ways to deliver our course materials. And the transition actually creates even more opportunities for attack vectors and cyber attacks and exploitation. And so in this case, cybersecurity is becoming even more important than ever if it's not the same. So for example, as many of you have heard, many of the video conferencing applications that you use in these days are actually has reported some security vulnerabilities. So for cybersecurity education, this is becoming a very good case studies. So for example, last semester, at the end of last semester, I gave student capstone projects. I actually asked them, one of them to study these security vulnerability issues on Zoom application as the one that you're using right now. So it becomes a very good real world example for the students. And as Dean Hill mentioned earlier, we have just launched an MS in cybersecurity program. And so in this program, in addition to many of our undergraduate degree program, which has a lot of security courses, we adapt this way as a hands-on learning using real-world example. And when we transition our material virtually, we actually have many different ways to deliver the course material. Well, for example, we use virtual infrastructure, virtual machine, and virtual network for students to practice within a limited boundary so that they can try out different cases and investigate different problems.
And what can the students who are going to enroll in this new program in the fall, what can they really look forward to in their learning experience?
There are many different ways of doing that. So in cybersecurity, the most important part, as Emil and Jill and Michael mentioned, that the main difference between cybersecurity and your other computing disciplines, such as computer science, the main difference is you have hackers in mind, right? You have this adversary thinking. You have to think about how hacker will react when they are trying to get to the system, when they are scanning the system, what are they going to find? So for education, in addition to regular technical courses, we really want to provide student opportunity to train their adversary thinking, to think of the problem from attacker's perspective.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff and incredibly important as we're learning this afternoon. I'd like to ask all of the panelists, with this constantly evolving threat, what are the biggest concerns, your biggest worries that are keeping you and your clients up at night right now? Emil? Oh, muted.
My apologies. Well, there's a lot. I mean, from a company standpoint, from a provider of services to the federal government, I'm very worried about, do we have the right skill set to support the contracts we have and the opportunities we go after? Because, as cybersecurity is not just technology, it's policy, it's understanding how to put systems on Department of Defense networks, it's understanding new certification programs such as the cybersecurity maturity model that's being put out now by DoD. So there's multiple things we worry about. And then from a client standpoint, I'll tell you a couple of things that are really worrying me. They're a little bit futures, but artificial intelligence really is beginning to concern me, because as we develop artificial intelligence to automate a lot of functions and decisions that are made, especially in DoD, hackers are using it to use for attacks and denial of service. And the more, it's kind of an arms race to who gets there first, because as fast as they get there with artificial intelligence in attack mode, you have to get there to be able to defend and counterattack. And that is a game that is going to go, I hate to call it a game, but that is going to something that is going to be very significant in the future as computing changes. And, you know, it's something that we really got to look at closely, all professionals in the future.
Joe, what are you seeing? Or more specifically, what's keeping you up at night?
For me, it's about the things that I cannot control. And what do I mean by that? Third-party risk management, I think, becomes a huge concern, especially dealing with third-party vendors, as we, you know, either they're providing a service or we're sending them data. Because we don't have full visibility in a lot of their systems, you know, we're worried about things such as misconfigurations, you know, and then your third parties also have fourth parties, right? People that they use potentially to store their system. So how do we ensure that the third party that we're dealing with have the proper security controls so they don't end up in the news and we don't end up in the news because of their breaches, right? So that's one of my biggest concerns. How do we ensure the third parties that we work with today have the proper security controls in place to protect my data, whether it's the bank's data, personal data, wherever the case may be? Because we honestly look at most of the issues are having, the breaches are usually coming from a third party, right? And it's usually because some sort of misconfiguration from a cloud environment. You know, I think the cloud environment, as most of the IT organizations today are starting to transition to, there needs to be more focus and visibility on protecting our third-party cloud environments.
Interesting. And Michael?
Or similar to Emil on our company side, it's getting the right talent and right people. There's more work out there than there are bodies to take care of this work. You know, read the stats, 300, 400,000 million jobs open in the next few years in the cyber and information security space. From the client side, what should keep them up at night is what they don't know, not knowing what they don't know. We talked a lot about threats, and it's understanding your threat actors. You know, one thing to know is the threat actors are very capable these days, and it's not an individual behind a keyboard trying to attack systems. These are automated methods. There are criminal organizations. It's a big business in some of these, you know, nefarious territories where it's very well constructed, very well organized. And from a business perspective, you're competing against the cyber criminals that don't have to pay taxes, don't have to give employee benefits, don't have to worry about regulation. So already the playing field is in their favor. And when we talk about threat actors, definitely agree with Joe that the third parties are a big concern. But one of the biggest threat actors that firms have is the employee. And it comes in two classes. It's the malicious employee, which can be the most impactful because they're on the inside, but also the negligent employee. Those that may not understand the policies and procedures and could even be harder for them to understand if the firm doesn't have crisp policies and procedures and the information disseminated to them, but even just being tricked, right? The preliminary discussions around the Twitter attack is social engineering and getting involved with the employees and getting them to, you know, divulge information that they shouldn't. So user negligence, even just the fat finger error, can also be very harmful for organizations. So really have to know that threat landscape.
Yeah, the people element is always unpredictable. And Joe, you've made some really good points. What are the things right now that you're seeing drive the field of cybersecurity? Is it laws and regulations, or is it, as Michael points out, the bad actors or organizational policies?
I think it's a combination of things. Most importantly, is definitely the regulations, right? The regulations, whether for federal, local, or state organizations, are putting more focus on that you have a cybersecurity program. And the most reason why is, like, you see in the public news all the time, right? Breaches are happening where every single company or organizations are out there. So we're definitely seeing a lot more increase in cyber regulations. You know, New York DFS, for instance, has one of the strongest and stringent regulatory requirements when it comes to cybersecurity in the financial services sector. But what's also actually interesting as well, too, I'm starting to see as well, privacy regulations are now up and coming as well, too, right? So we're starting to see a lot more privacy regulations dealing with people personal data. You know, I believe New York Shield Act just went into effect a couple of months ago. So that's something that we have to now be aware of as well, too, on top of the cyber regulations that we have to worry about. And I think it's just going to get worse. You know, I think the oversight from all these state and federal organizations, they're going to put a lot more focus on cybersecurity programs and protecting your personal data. Because at the end of the day, I think, protecting your data and make sure leakage doesn't go get exposed or hacked is the most important factor in what we have to deal with today.
Interesting. Emil, what do you think?
I was just going to follow up what Joe said. I can't agree with him more about this whole privacy concern, because you're kind of walking a tightrope. Even when you're trying to do things like multi-factor authentication, where you log in with a password and then it sends you to your phone a code. Many of you probably have seen that. If you don't want to do that, then you don't have multi-factor authentication if you don't want to provide a second way to do it. And then there is, if you look at COVID, this is a good example, contact tracing, right? If you don't agree to be part of that, then contact tracing really doesn't work. So there is this level of cooperation between citizens and those that are trying to protect systems that's really a fine line. That's very difficult to walk, because not everybody is going to agree, because they have their privacy. And thus, we're always going to have gaps that we're going to have to fill, because privacy will always stand in the way of 100% protection.
Yeah, interesting. And we keep coming back to that P word, right? And so, in this context, what are the skills and traits needed for cyber executives and cyber professionals at this time? And, we're trying to prepare folks for the future. And as I ask this question, I see these incredibly bright, motivated Seidenberg and Pace students here that really want to work with you and be the next generation of cybersecurity pros. So, what are those skills and traits? Michael, where should they start? What should they focus on?
Well, they obviously a trade is a passion for the industry, and the skill sets are pretty wide. It's to be a successful and have a nice, solid cyber and information security program. It really isn't run by one person. Yes, you have the chief information security officer at the top, which needs a core foundation of technical knowledge, but really needs that business acumen, circling back to what I talked to before, and understanding what the business risks are, what the impacts are on the business, and understanding what the marketing team is trying to accomplish, and what controls you need to put in place to allow them to be successful, but not to hold them back. Same thing in areas in your legal department and other parts of the organization. Students that I've interacted with in the last couple of years that want to get into the space, a lot of them want to do penetration testing and get into real hardcore technical areas, but a foundational knowledge of understanding policies and procedures, the 3 lines of defense, how you're identifying the risk, how you're complying with the controls that are in place, right? What are the implementation of the controls, and then the testing of the efficiency and the effectiveness of the controls. So to get further up the management chain, definitely need to get skills in a multitude of areas. However, there are people that will be hardcore technical people. I always revert back to the 10,000 hours model of musicians and athletes, and same on a penetration tester. Those that are doing it more and more frequently will continually build up that skill set, because they'll get more exposure, right? They'll see more types of attacks, more types of events, and have that real hands-on experience. So the ability to rise up the chain, as I mentioned before, is having a full skill set, understanding the technical foundation, the business acumen, but also knowing when you need to bring in subject matter specialists, because it can't be run by just one single person, unless it's a very, very small shop. But even like Joe said, people that understand third-party vendor risk, people that can do the incident response work, even training and program and policy development. So it's a wide range, and it's a long haul, but there's a lot of opportunity out there for people, and it's a great time to get into the space for sure.
Yeah, and we're concerned on the education end, because this gap between the necessary skills and the jobs to be done and the available talent hasn't narrowed. And so are universities and other training programs meeting the workforce needs right now in the public and private sectors? What's working and what's not? And Neil, you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, I'll try to go quickly. I mean, for me, and it maps my career being a computer scientist, is I found that what was very helpful for me in my education was really starting and understanding how operating systems work. right? Computer operating systems, really having that good foundational base of how computing systems work really was helpful to me then to go into many directions on one, cybersecurity, and secondly, how just information systems works. I think in those programs, it's very important to always go back to, especially if you're a technical, I'm not talking about policy and, legal matters, but really understanding how these systems work and then applying, the things that really are going to be needed in the future is how do we address things like quantum computing? How do we do things like artificial intelligence and machine learning? And then, other things, there are new technologies coming out that I think these programs are going to need to evolve to, such as blockchain. So all of these new technologies, and blockchain's really not new, it's just being applied differently, really are where I think that programs like PACE are going to need to evolve. And I think the partnership with academia and the private sector is extremely important here because the landscape will change quickly and you're going to have to adapt to how that landscape changes. And, your alumni and students can be helpful because as they work in, in the industry, they can come back and help advise, which I know that you do already.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we do very well is listen. We're great requirements gatherers, and Dr. Chen is truly a world-class talent in the area of cybersecurity education. And so, Dr. Chen, tell us about this new master's degree program and why we think it's a great step forward in meeting the needs of industry.
Sure. As what Michael and Emil talked about earlier, in cybersecurity field, you cannot just know about the technology, but doesn't know about the system or the people who are involved in it. So as that being said, our curriculum in the MS in Cybersecurity program actually are considering all the aspects that we have talked about. So when we develop the curriculum, we are actually based on the professional guidance from ACM and NSA accreditation, as well as there is a cybersecurity workforce framework. It's called NICE from NIST, and that actually defines different roles, a work role that one can play in the cybersecurity field. So for example, as a security analyst, or as an auditor, or as a risk management person. So they might need to know different aspects in terms of cybersecurity. So while we're designing this program, we are considering some fundamental knowledge students need to acquire, in addition to giving students some flexibility so that they incorporate the knowledge from different fields. So basically in our curriculum, we have some courses that guide students to know the system. So for example, we have an operating system administration course. We have a course in network security defense so that students can get better to know about the system and to know how to harden the system. And that's the first step for cybersecurity. Without knowing the system, you cannot actually figure out what it can go wrong, right? And the other course we have is the ones that identify security problems in the system. As what Michael mentioned earlier, we have some courses on penetration testing, but that's just one of it, so that you know what are the different ways to identify problems in a system. However, the landscape evolves very, very quickly. The tool that you learn today, it might be obsolete tomorrow. So the point is not really right now for you to learn how exactly a software works, but really the concept behind how you identify the problem. So we also have courses that actually try to analyze the problem and analyze information that you gather. So we have some courses that incorporate ideas from AI, machine learning, as Emil just talked about. This is a very, very up-to-date topic as to how to use this algorithm to analyze the information that you can gather from the system to identify the problem, to generate alarms, or even to figure out solutions to solve the problems. All right, so in this program, we also have a concentration track, so you can put some of the courses that you like to do and towards a concentration track. So basically, we have two main concentration track. One is called cyber operation. So that's mainly focused on the technical aspect of cybersecurity. So we have courses about mobile forensics, about analyzing malware, reverse engineering. On the other side, as Michael mentioned earlier, it's very important that when time goes by, you want to move up your career, you may want to consider something that at more management level. In that case, you need to know more about information related to management, such as risk management, IT auditing, regulation. So those are part of the elective curriculum in this program.
At PACE, we practice a very collaborative style of education, and things that are deeply technical benefit from academic industry partnerships. What do you need, Dr. Chen, from the industry side to create effective partnerships to prepare people to go out into industry and fill these, unfilled jobs?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. And this is something we're currently doing already. Have a strong alumni network and industry partner network that actually help us a lot in terms of cybersecurity education. So we actually have many different activities that we collaborate with this industry partner in our alumni network. This might include running cybersecurity competition, and we also have our annual cybersecurity conferences, and we also run some cybersecurity seminars throughout the semester. So our students can actually network with industry experts and then also talk to the alumni so that they know a lot better about what exactly is going on in the industry. And then what are the things that they learn in school that can apply in their future jobs. So in addition to that, our industry partner is also helpful to provide us some real-world examples. So for example, when they learn things in school, they learn certain techniques, they learn systematic methods. So we're very good at this in analyzing problems from different angles. However, with working with industry experts, that can actually generate synergy in bringing these real-world problems to our lab, to our classroom. So students can think about it, I learned about this, but how can I use this method, this algorithm to solve a real-world problem in security? And that is the aha moment sometimes the students feel very excited about.
Now, that's great. And it goes both ways. So, Michael, what do you need from PACE? What do you need from the university sector in terms of educating people that can hit the ground running for your needs?
I think the universities are doing a great job of putting programs together that give them the skills, give them the passion to get out there. What it really comes down to is, I think on the corporate side in our world, is we have to have people that will give these kids a shot. These graduates, I shouldn't say kids, but graduates coming out. And when I say a shot, a lot of the job descriptions they go to want a year, 3 years experience, and that's a showstopper to get into the door. You need more mentoring programs. 3 years ago, I hired a graduate student from PACE, came in, best hire I ever made. He said in the beginning out front that, he wanted to learn. And I told him, I will give you all the time to answer all the questions if you want to put the effort into it. And we didn't leave a meeting where he didn't have a list of questions afterwards, and we went through them one by one by one. And he was also very patient because as he came out of school working with a lot of, sexy tools and hot technologies, we put him right up front working on frameworks and policies and procedures and going through NIST guidance and the FFIEC cybersecurity assessment tool, reading through policies and procedures. He said after a year of doing that he got his PhD in cyber and information security because he understood everything across the full spectrum. 3 years later, he's moved on to another firm. He's doing phenomenal and doing very well. Det, who I'm talking about probably. And so that's really where the industry has to have that, welcoming their energy and enthusiasm and feeding it to give them what they need to be successful.
Yeah, I hope we're recording this so I can play this for some of our other industry partners, because especially in cyber, the pressure is so intense and the needs are so immediate. Not everybody feels the responsibility to take the time to answer questions and to train and to prepare people.
It will
And
pay off in multitudes, Jonathan. The payback is multiples over. It's worth the time.
Yeah, and Jonathan, I want to jump in that a lot of our students actually obtain internships at different companies, and they come back look at problem very differently after the summer internship.
yeah, no, and that's just a wonderful thing. Um, and Joe, Emil, I want to get your thoughts on this as well.
So yeah, actually to kind of pick up on what Michael was saying, right? You know, a lot of the PACE students or even just students graduating from cybersecurity programs these days actually have a lot of industry experience. Now they're teaching fundamentals of like 1 year, first year students or first year people in the workforce today on like basic setups such as network configurations, right? So these are actually real world experience that actually they're learning from the schools these days. You know, I think one of the challenges we're facing, and what I also see as well too, like we do have a shortage, right? We don't have enough cybersecurity professionals out there. And then we're also seeing all these really outrageous job requirements asking for a 3 year experience or looking for some sort of unicorn. In my opinion, the unicorn these days are really our next generation students, right? We need to start training them. We need to start hiring them. They have the experience. They just need a chance and opportunity to really show what they have learned in schools. And in my opinion, they actually do have the fundamentals. You know, I look at a lot of the programs, whether it's from Pace University or any other schools, what they're teaching today is the fundamentals of cybersecurity. Immediately once they graduate, they do have the knowledge and skill sets to fulfill a 1 year or 2 year experience that they're asking for. And we need to start preaching to the employers out there, listen, take the chance on these students, right? Because they have the skill sets. You just need to give them an opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joe. Emil?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with both Joe and Michael. I mean, you know, the students today are much more technology savvy than those that even graduated 10 years ago. I mean, you live with technology. How many people still use paper and pencil and things like that? Everything is technology. Everyone's using social media. So the knowledge of individuals today is much greater. So for me, I always like to bring in new, uh, new staff members, because I can tell you that for the most part, interns that I've brought in are almost better than some of our midterm people. Not because they've got more experience, because they look at the world with a different perspective. And and that is extremely important in the world of social media now with remote work, Zoom. You really need these different perspectives, and young students really can bring a different way to look at things and have a diversity of thought that lets you think differently around the threat environment. So extremely important. And I think that more and more employers are starting to see that. And I think for students coming out with cybersecurity degrees or computer science degrees, I don't think they're going to have problems finding jobs. Once they're in and people see that there's value, they'll probably be working for the rest of their career.
Yeah, we look forward to that. We are just about at that point in our conversation where we turn it over to the audience for really good questions. Another celebrity sighting, Dr. Soon-to-be Denise Dragos just came in. Welcome, Denise. And I'd just like to ask you all for your lightning insights into what you see as one challenge and one great opportunity in cyber today. So who wants to start? One challenge and one opportunity in the field.
I'll go quick. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
No, go ahead, Emil.
One challenge, as I said, I think quantum computing, machine learning, artificial intelligence, keeping up with the threat vectors is the challenge, and it'll always be a challenge. And then the opportunity is, I think, for a cybersecurity professional, you have a lot of different avenues to go. There's, if you're a legal, going to be a lawyer, there's law, there's policy, there's technical. Cybersecurity applies to anything information technology. So for students, you have great opportunities in many different directions and have a wide variety to choose from.
Yeah, I'll just add on top of both of those, very similarly on the challenge side, keeping up with the education. I was with some golf buddies over the weekend and they said, Mike, how do you keep up with all of this? You know, try to read as much as you can, threat intelligence, database resources, but your peers and your colleagues, people coming out of the universities that are trained on the latest tools, like Professor Chen said, they're changing all the time. And then also to add on to Emil's point, for those getting into this space, you're not held to one specific vertical. Yes, financial services and healthcare, those areas like online commerce that have high volumes of personal information and monetary transactions definitely are the forefront. But you look at areas like infrastructure, even automated vehicles, right? Jeep Cherokee was hacked years ago. The Boeing 737 MAX plane, those were software issues. And so software is integrated in every industry right now. Emil also led into legal, the entertainment space. Everything now revolves around technology. So you don't have to pick a specific vertical. You understand the core skill sets, and now you can move into any vertical where you really have that dual passion to promote your career.
Love it. Joe?
Yeah, I kind of agree with everything what Mia and Michael said, right? I mean, cybersecurity crosses all platforms, right? You don't have to work in finance or healthcare. You know, I'm seeing a lot of job openings for even media these days. You know, SiriusXM is recently hiring for a CISO. You know, I see things from Warner Brothers and Hollywood now where they're looking for security professionals because they're trying to protect their intellectual property, which is the movies that they're making, right? So it's definitely an open field now, right? You know, in my opinion, it's also, I want to say it's recession proof because at the end of the day, a cybersecurity professional is always playing catch up to the criminals, right? We're always going to be one step behind them. So we're always going to have to keep protecting the organization and making sure from a risk management standpoint, we are advising the proper advice to our management and to organizations that we work for on how to protect their data.
Great, and thank you. We're starting to get questions in the chat, the Zoom group chat. So if you have a question for our wonderful panel, please put it in there. And then first one, we have something about ransomware that came through. And really, oops, they're coming in fast and furious. One of our guests would like to know your thoughts about best practices to defend against ransomware, including virtual machines, sandboxing, or alternate architecture on a Chromebook for normal browsing and online activities. How do we protect against ransomware?
I'll start off with that. I think protecting for ransomware, it's two steps. Right? One is social engineering, right? You need to make sure you understand what is it that you're downloading or clicking or what website you're visiting, right? From an organizational standpoint as well, too, you know, people always focus on how to stop and prevent ransomware from coming in. But most importantly, I think what organization also needs to focus on is recovery, right? How do we protect against and recover against ransomware? So I think a recovery backup strategy is very important, right? Because if you can restore the data that gets encrypted, you don't have to worry about paying the ransom. So I think a lot more organizations need to more focus on recovering technologies.
Yeah, I'll add on to that with Joe. And so the recovery technologies for firms and organizations do what's called a tabletop exercise beforehand. So play through the scenario of a ransomware before it hits, right? Like firms have traditional fire drills. Run it through with the executives and understand, are we going to be able to combat this attack without having to succumb to the requests for monetary items?
That's great. There's a question for Dr. Chen. Zach Auslander asks, can you expand on an example of a student whose internship experience led her to have a different perspective when they came back to their studies?
So a lot of my students, either undergraduate student or graduate students, most of them have internship during the summer. And also I'm running a scholarship program. Students have to do a summer internship at the government. So I talk to a lot of these students, and after they come back after the summer, depending on what their works are, okay, so some of them are, say, for example, before the internship, they are really interested in doing penetration testing, scanning a virtual machine. But after they come back from internship, they might see security problems slightly differently. They say, okay, during the summer internship, I actually help the organization to look at these policy issues and compliance issues. I never thought about these are important things. I thought that the most important things about security is using Nmap and scanning the servers, right? So they might see different aspects about the organization. And the hardest thing for us to teach students, number one is problem solving in the changing landscape. Number two is teamwork. It's hard to teach you how to do teamwork, although sometimes we're team projects. So after the summer experience, I think these ideas probably gradually get to the students through their internship with the company.
Great, thank you. Question for the panel. What's more valued in industry? An academic degree in cybersecurity or a certificate from a provider like AWS, IBM, Microsoft, etc.?
Oh, I mean, honestly, I think, I think both are important. I probably would value the degree more because that really kind of shows that you've taken multiple courses, depending on the level of certification. I think certifications are very important if you're working on the cloud, AWS, and you're doing certain technologies. But to get that overall foundation, that's extremely important. I think you're never going to be able to, kind of say one or the other. And the education, to me, is always going to be extremely important.
Great, thank you. And just want to give a shout out to Urs Foley, the CIO, who's joining us this afternoon as well, one of our beloved and extraordinarily accomplished alums. Questions come in about artificial intelligence. Are there any recommended subskills or programming languages that should be learned now to later build more advanced artificial intelligence systems? And it's probably important to ask you all, what is the impact of AI on cyber today?
Hi, this is Joe here. So definitely a lot of programming languages are helpful, especially trying to create something related to AI. I'm not a programming expert, so I can't really speak too much about that, but I can tell you from an AI and machine learning perspective, it is helping the cybersecurity community. The reason why is we get a lot of alerts, right, that we need to work on, triage, and report on. If you're working for a big organization, those alerts can look like anywhere in the thousands to millions per day. So what a machine learning and AI does is helps us weed out potential false positive alerts and help us to action upon alerts that we need to focus and look at, right? So any of the false positives gets removed, any of the high riskier ones will get recognized. We're not there yet where we will say, let's rely on AI to just automatically make the decision for us, because there's still some worry that the AI may make a wrong decision and it will block a business process. But I think eventually it will get there. There are certain things where AI we do use today because it's based on a pattern. Like hackers will traditionally follow some sort of pattern, right? And if you understand what that pattern is, you could block certain things as that pattern goes. And we do have some tools today that will block things based on a pattern. Your endpoint security from companies like Carbon Black are a perfect example where it is a partial machine learning that it will block based on understanding of what the hacker is trying to do. But at the end of the day, I think machine learning and AI is going to continue to improve, and it will expand the community as well too.
And just to be specific, to follow up on Joe, I think what I'm seeing is, languages that have been used quite a lot are Python and Java. And I don't think that's going to change. There'll be others like R and some others that are developing, but I think if you want to, focus on Python, Java, I think that those languages will still be in use for quite a number of years. I may be wrong because you never know, but right now Python's used by quite a number of individuals for AI.
Yeah, I agree with Emil. Several professors in Seidenberg actually are specialized in AI, and I collaborate with some of them a lot, and we use Python or R analyzing a lot of different cybersecurity data. So it depends on what kind of data you want to analyze. And also shell programming is important as well, since you'll be able to process the system information and convert it into an analytical format.
That's great. And something came in from one of our entrepreneurs. What are the entrepreneurial opportunities that you're seeing in addressing cyber risk today? Are there opportunities for new services, new products, new companies? What's out there from a startup standpoint?
I'll take this one if you guys don't mind first. Or actually, Michael, go ahead first.
I'll just be brief. I mean, there's a lot of startups out there. Every day there's new companies coming on the marketplace. I think it's very similar to the late 90s when internet commerce was booming and there was
Everybody wants to be in show business.
exactly. And now what has happened, 20 years later, you got probably 5 companies handling 95% of the market space. Where I still see probably a shortage is in that forensics area. The barrier to entry is a little higher than others because you're going to require a sophisticated forensics lab. But just in a conversation I had with somebody this morning said, this could be an area we want to, focus some of our investments in 2021 because there are so many more incidents and items to be responded to. Joe, hand over to you.
Yeah, so I'm actually on a couple of VC boards focusing on cybersecurity startups, and some of the things that we're seeing around from innovation across the world is, detection and visibility on your data, on how you're processing it, how's it leaving, especially from the software API perspective, are pretty hot right now in the cybersecurity community because there's currently a lack of products out there that focuses on API integrations, and hackers are starting to focus on hacking and compromising systems using the API. So there's definitely a huge focus there. Detection's always been popular, right? People are looking for ways to improve detection. So we still see a lot of startups on creating abilities to detect malicious activities or suspicious activities, whatever the case may be. So definitely, I think cybersecurity from a cyber startup perspective is still a hot commodity. People are constantly creating new ideas and technologies.
Yeah. Thank you. And questions come in about cyber attacks. Under the influence of unemployment caused by the pandemic around the world, do you think that cyber attacks are going to be the new Depression era bank robberies? Do you think we're going to see more attempts by bad actors to hold up companies to extort money if it's in Bitcoin or cash or what have you? Is that something we're going to see a greater prevalence of?
I could start with that. I think that, again, I think, cybersecurity attacks are the future of war. I hate to say it, but, it's if you think about traditional wars in the past, you send soldiers overseas, big efforts logistically to send troops overseas or even defend. It's very easy now for bad actors to sit behind a keyboard, especially state-funded actors, to attack a critical infrastructure, try to take down, the electricity system, the electrical systems, power grids, or take down, financial services. I think it's, it is what we're going to have to live with the future is that we have to realize that it's a lot easier there's always going to be bad actors, and computing systems just make it easier for bad actors to do bad things. So I would expect it's probably going to escalate before it gets better.
Yeah, I think it's already here, right? All the points Emil hit, the old war movies, they want to knock out communications first. Now they can do it technically. 5-6 years ago, working with some of the NYPD law enforcement guys there, they were seeing a significant drop in violent crimes because violent crimes, possession of a handgun, use of that weapon in a crime would get you 5 to 10, but scamming somebody on credit card scams or white collar type crimes was a much less offense that you would pay, much less punishment. So I think it's already here. And like Emil said, it's just going to continue to evolve.
Very, very interesting stuff. And again, we're going to hear about these things, day in, day out. We're getting a number of questions about certificates. And Joe, I understand. So if anyone on the panel is willing to stay, we've got the questions coming in fast and furious. We'll continue for a few minutes. And if
I gotta hop off, but I'll just answer the search real quick. I think certificates are very, very important, right? As you develop your career, not so much in your earlier career, but definitely more towards your later careers. Like after 3 or 4 years experience or 5 years experience, I think that certificates that definitely can help you improve your profession. The certificates, what they do really is it enhances your fundamentals on what you know already today, and it uses your experience to kind of really certify you, say, listen, I am an industry professional because I know this stuff, this material, right? You know, CISSP is a perfect certification where it asks for 5 years of experience. Because why? Because you need to eventually be able to touch some of the items that are in cybersecurity, like IT technical skills, or understand more of the policies and procedures related to cybersecurity before you can really take and pass that test, you know? So I think at the end of the day, certs does help a lot, but I want to take it in an earlier career.
Okay. Is there a top three maybe that you would offer as holding the most immediate learning value for someone getting into the field?
ISACA has several that make sense. You know, if you want to be a security professional or manager, you know, you got your CISM, Certified Information Security Manager. You got your CISA, Certified Information Security Auditor. ISE Squared, which is your CISSP, which is almost like I guess your master. I'm sorry, your top certification when it comes to cybersecurity, right? So, in my opinion, those are your top three that are very, very important.
I would like to add to that. What kind of certificate you want to do really depending on what area you're focusing on. So for example, if you are interested in doing ethical hacking and secure the system, there are a couple of certifications that's different from ISACA one, but it really depends on area you're interested in.
Good. And hate to tell you this, but no sooner does Joe leave than the hard questions start popping up. So Michael and Emil, we have one from one of our hot shots here. I've got good technical skills, good quantitative skills. Why would I want to go into cybersecurity as opposed to, say, financial services where the immediate rewards might be better?
Well, I doing a lot of work in financial services, some pretty large hedge funds. I found over the last 6-7 years, they have a hard time maintaining the staff because, as we talked about before, the increased regulations, you know, and a lot of them have turned down higher paydays working for some of these large investment firms because they wanted to go to areas where they could be a little more creative, you know, Facebook, Google, other types of companies that are emerging that aren't under as heavy a regulation. And they found that much more rewarding for their self and their career development.
And I would just add on to that, you know, it's an interesting question because I think it's really where your passion is.
Yeah.
I would highly advise people, I know you can make a lot of money in both areas, but you really should choose something that you really want to do. I mean, if you want to work for a hedge fund, that's a different type of pressure. If you want to work doing technical work for cybersecurity, you really got to find your passion, and, you know, maybe you try a little bit of both. You try one for a little bit and try the other. Really what's important is you really got to find your passion and where you want to focus your career, because you're going to be doing it the next 30 years. So neither choice is bad, but if it's something that you really like to do and it really interests you, that's really what you should focus on.
Great advice. And another celebrity sighting, the great Dr. Sal Contes, who brought cybersecurity education to the high school arena. Welcome. So glad you're with us today. And another question that has popped in, bug bounties. Are bug bounties a viable way of reducing risks?
Well, you know, again, software companies do it quite a bit. And I think that they're very helpful because, you know, there's a lot of, as we talked about before, young, you know, entrepreneurs who really, really have great skills. And, you know, the software companies that create these solutions, not just software, I should say hardware, network company, because they all have intelligence in their systems. You know, they're struggling with the same thing everybody else is struggling, keeping up, getting the right skills, and being able to do all the analysis to find the holes. So I think bug bounties are actually very good because you're really getting, it's kind of crowdsourcing, finding issues. And by doing that, you know, again, if you're doing it for the good of protection, it's a good thing. And offering the bounties is just, you know, a good incentive to get some of these individuals that might just like, yeah, I don't want to do it. Oh, you're going to pay me $1,000. Oh, maybe I'll take some time to do it. So I think it's a good thing because it's the community working together to solve problems.
Yeah, and you're competing with the corporate. So I think Apple's bug bounty might be up in the neighborhood of $200,000. And the black market, a 0-day vulnerability that's discovered for maybe some critical database applications, and a 0-day meaning one that there is no fix for yet, on the black market, the dark web, could sell for multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars because it'll be sold to attackers that have been gathering threat intelligence of all the firms that have this version of the SAP database and the financial transactions, and they can exploit that pretty quickly. So it's got to be paid for somewhere. Like Emil said, is it going to be paid by the good guys or by the bad guys? Somebody's going to pay for it.
Interesting, and I'd like to close out with some off the record personal advice from both of you. We have we've had 78 people participating in this today. A good chunk of them are alums. They're mid-career professionals. What advice would you give to the mid-career professionals about leveraging their skills? Some of them are in cyber, some of them are in IT or software engineers in other areas. What advice might you give them about leveraging the opportunities in cyber for their own careers?
I'll go for it. I think you got to be somewhat patient. You have to be really driving your own ambitions in education. Similar, circling back to where Emil said, the degree is probably more critical. And the analogy I put of the guy I brought in, hired, and put him in some, compliance type work that he wasn't really thrilled about. You really need to have a rounded view. I look back to when I went to college and I didn't like the philosophy classes so much. I deal with psychoanalysis every day in the business. So you have to really be open to understand all aspects of it because they're all intertwined. As Emil said, you evolve further down the path, then you can look to certain certificates if you want to get into an area of specialty. But it's opportunistic, be patient, and network a lot. Like I said before, you have to find those people that, will give you the opportunity.
I agree with Michael. I mean, and again, I go back to something I said earlier, is you really got to find what you're passionate about. I think keeping an open mind and, not trying to say, well, I want to be this kind of professional. You always continually have to keep learning. That's why I think this cybersecurity degree is so important, because you have to continually learn because the threat landscaping is changing. There's changes on the policy side. There's changes on the law side. There's changing on how business is working. New technologies like we talked about, machine learning, AI, quantum computing. Things are evolving quickly. So as a professional, really kind of look at, where your passion is and continue to learn, because you do not want to let your skills get stale. So this continuous learning is extremely important as you evolve your career.
Yeah, and that's terrific. And I want to say, again, to me as an alumni of Pace University and someone who has benefited tremendously from the various programs that Michelle Camardella has put on, there is fantastic power in our alumni network. There are so many tremendous people at various stages of the career cycle, the career life cycle, who have so much in common with you. So I really hope that you will continue to support this network and reach out to one another, and we will have lots and lots of opportunities for the PACE alumni, the Seidenberg alumni group to be together, and tremendous power in that. And the other big constituency here are current students, undergraduate and graduate students. And if I look at the questions that come up, they're a little bit overwhelmed by all of those job postings that want 3 years experience and 10 years experience. And what can our students do to get in the door as they begin to look toward graduation?
I think Michael said it pretty well. It's a lot of networking, getting to know, attending I know it's a little tougher now with COVID, attending seminars. Companies have, hiring events, reaching out to these companies when they post jobs, even if you don't think you're qualified. If you can tell them about your experience and write in a way that shows your passion, what you're interested in, what you've learned. The worst thing that happens is they can say no. But don't give up. Just keep reaching out, because eventually you'll find someone that'll say, hey, I want to take a chance. I need more people. What do I have? I mean, me as a professional, if I see someone really good and we've got an opening and they may not be specifically what we need, if I see the passion and I see that the person is really, got a lot of energy, I might take a chance. And there's a lot of hiring professionals that will do the same thing. So you might get turned down 99 times out of 100, but that 100th time may be something that you really like. So don't give up, stay enthusiastic, and just keep trying, because with your backgrounds, you're definitely going to get in. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
just the networking again, opportunity I had in the past, entry level, had 100 resumes. The third one was a PACE graduate. Sorry to say I didn't look at the other 97. Just hired that person right there. And, continue to show that you have the initiative to learn on your own, and continually asking questions, and be well prepared when you're going to the interviews. But don't hesitate to reach out to people, make connections. They may know somebody that knows somebody. These days it's harder than ever, especially when you're applying to jobs that seem to go into a black hole. And so anything you can do to make those personal connections really help. Even today in my career, I still continually to do that on a daily basis.
No, that's great. And the last question is for you, Licho. And we have had lots of folks who are asking about the MS in Cybersecurity program, a couple of folks who are either in our PhD program or about to start and want to understand how they can focus on cybersecurity. So what can you share with us about this new program, and how folks can get into it, and what they're going to get out of it, and how they can continue their studies in cyber postmasters? That's a long question.
Thank you. So the MS in Cybersecurity program, we started this fall. So, and starting with a couple of required courses. So for those of you who are interested, you're welcome to contact me or directly submit your applications. And we have student advisors who can advise you, and based on whatever courses you have taken before. I know a lot of students or a lot of applicants might have a diverse background. So for students who do not have computing background, we have a couple of bridge courses that can help you to get up to speed. For those of you who were computer science or ITIS major, you can just directly take the required courses. In terms of cybersecurity area, I think this is a ever-changing area. And then a lot of our professors here are doing different kind of research. And we are actually trying to engage students into our research projects. Okay, either a project related to analyzing cyber intelligence using machine learning algorithm, or most recently, we have a research project analyzing tweets and trying to figure out how to identify spam bots, things like that. We always welcome students' input and be engaged in the research project. So while you're in school, either in our master program or in our PhD program, you'll have a lot of opportunity to work with professors in these different research labs. So I personally have a research lab that we look at problems related to data analytics and cybersecurity. And then another professor, Darren Hayes, actually focus on digital forensics, mobile forensics, as the field that Michael just mentioned earlier. And we have Professor Jean Gaberty, actually has a lab in New York City and has several machines that you can get into hands-on exercise and maybe practicing material related to certification. He gave our CISSP courses for preparing for certification. So there are abundant of resources that we offer here that can help you succeed in your career.
Yeah, it's a rich program. We have fantastic faculty who bring both the theoretical side and the hands-on applied side. And look at this bench of fabulous alumni that we have who are working at the highest levels of cybersecurity, and in many cases have been there since before it was a separate industry, and have led that creation of cybersecurity into a separate skill set and a separate professional track. So tremendous richness here. And Michael and Emil and Joe, although he's left for now, I can't thank you enough from bottom of my heart, and on behalf of the Seidenberg School and Pace University. We're so thankful that you are ours, and we're so grateful to you for spending some time with our community today. Can I ask both of you for final thoughts as we head out into our afternoons?
You first, Emil.
Again, I'll go back to my last point is, you know, look, you're all in a great position if you have an interest in cybersecurity. You will have great careers. There's many different facets you can go into. I encourage you to really consider a master's degree or even a PhD in cybersecurity. It will pay back in multiple ways. So I think, you know, again, and very important, continue to learn. I know if you're new people entering the workforce, don't give up. You'll get there. There's so much need out there. So I think you're all in a very good position, and I would encourage you to, you know, again, follow your passion. And if cybersecurity is it, you'll have a very fruitful career.
I let Emil go first because I knew he'd hit all the hot spots and make it easy for me. I couldn't say it any better. You know, get yourself educated. We do look at that when we're looking at hiring. You know, the skills and competency, you know, build over time. So you need to be patient. This is a challenging time to look for work. Hard to get those face-to-face interviews. Just be patient. As I said before, you know, I may not have said, but it's the only area in this country over the last 3-4 years where regulations have gotten stronger. Cybersecurity and privacy, it's not going away. The attackers are continuing to go that forefront on the attack side. So it may be a little bit of a challenge right now because of the overall pandemic environment, but be patient. And an additional parting thought, I want to thank the PACE community for including me in today's event. And it was really enjoyable. I hope you all got a lot out of it.
Great.
And I also add as well, you know, my gratitude to our alumni panelists and of course to our moderator, Seidenberg, Dean Hill, and Professor Li Xiao Chen for a very invigorating discussion. I also want to point out that several of you have sent terrific, insightful questions, and I know that some of them have not been answered. So to the extent that you're interested in having us follow up, please email me directly. As you can see on the screen, my name is Det Sao, so it's my first initial last name, dsao@pace.edu. So if you're itching, you know, to get a response and your questions are amazing, please do send them to me directly, and I'll make sure that I divert them to the appropriate people. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you, Michelle, for arranging this, and Det for doing such a wonderful job getting these stellar panelists. And Dr. Chen, we are so excited about the new program this fall. Can't wait to see it roll out.
Thank you, Dean Hill. I'm hoping to see a lot of you on campus and with the new program.
All right, everybody, have a great afternoon. Look forward to seeing you at our next program, and I hope in due time being able to greet you in person. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.